traits or characteristics in a child can be inherited from both paternal and maternal DNA. But inheritance follows certain rules. We know all this thanks to a monk-turned-scientist named Gregor Johann Mendel. He worked on heredity and worked out the main rules of inheritance through experiments. Mendel identified 7 pairs of characteristics in the pea plant. He also identified an interesting pattern of transmission of certain characteristics in pea plants. Based on these findings, he established the laws of inheritance. Let's look at his experiments on pea plants to learn more about these laws. Mendel used the garden pea plants for his experiments. He took pea plants with 2 different characteristics, a tall plant and a short plant. He crossed them to produce progeny or offspring from them. In the first generation, or F1, all plants were tall. What do you observe? You can see that only one of the parental traits was seen in the first generation, and not the mixture of both. So, were the traits tallness and shortness inherited in the first generation plants? Let's see. Mendel took these F1 tall plants and allowed them to reproduce by self-pollination. What is the interesting pattern that you observe here? In the second generation, or F2, all the plants are not tall. 1/4 of them is short. However, no short plants were crossed. This indicates that both the traits, the tallness and the shortness, were inherited in the first generation, but only the tallness was expressed. You can see on the screen that in the second generation there are both tall and short pea plants. It is clear that traits or features are inherited from parents. These traits are controlled and carried by genes. But how did tall plants produce short plants? To understand that, let us see how genes work. In these 2 plants, the 2 characteristics, tallness and shortness, have their own gene. To explain heredity, we represent genes by letters. Let us represent the genes for tallness by a capital T, whereas the genes for shortness by a small t. Now genes work in pairs. So genes for tallness is represented by 2 letters such as TT and for shortness as TT. These 2 letters in a gene, capital TT, are known as alleles. Same in the case of small t, small t. Sometimes tall plant can have a gene with alternative forms of alleles, and we can represent it as capital T and small t. If both the alleles in a gene are the same, like capital TT or small tt, then this gene is said to be in a homozygous state. Whereas if alleles of a gene are in alternative forms, such as capital T, small t, the gene is in heterozygous state. The morphological character, such as height of the plant in this example, is known as its phenotype. Now in the example shown here, there are 2 tall plants. They have the same height, but see their genetic makeup for tallness is different. One is capital TT and the other is capital T, small t, while for shortness the genetic makeup is shown as small tt. Scientists have termed this outer expression of a trait in an organism, such as tallness or shortness, as phenotype, whereas scientists have termed the genetic expression of a plant for a particular trait as genotype. All this simply means that since both the plants are tall and outwardly look the same, their phenotype is the same. However, their genetic makeup or genotype regarding their height is not the same. Every gene has two alleles, and we denote dominant alleles using a capital letter. To denote recessive alleles, we use small letters. The dominant allele expresses its characteristics in both the homozygous as well as in the heterozygous states. But the recessive allele expresses itself only in the homozygous state. Thus, expression of a trait or character depends upon the strength of the allele, whether it is dominant or recessive.